Welcome to HortTube, where we talk all things gardening. My name is Jim Putnam, and this is a Ruby Loropetalum. This is Ruby Loropetalum. This is one of the first varieties that could be kept as a smaller shrub fairly easily. When I first started in this business, Loropetalum varieties all got 25 feet tall, and you could prune them down to 3 feet and they'd wait for you to go in the house. And then by the time you came out in the morning, you had to crawl through them to get in your car. That's how fast they grew. And slowly but surely, other varieties like this one is called Ruby. It can get 8 feet tall actually, but it can be kept, much smaller than that. And now we actually have varieties that are almost ground cover like. So this plant has come a long way. It's sometimes hard selling these because people that had them in the past and were always fighting them don't understand that this is not the same plant as those original Loropetalums. Ruby Loropetalum can reach 6 to 8 feet in height, probably 4 to 5 feet in width. It's fairly easy to keep this plant in the 4 to 5 foot range, and 3 to 4 feet in width with just the occasional pruning. It's not in as big a hurry as some of the older varieties of Loropetalum were, so it's pretty easy to maintain this one smaller, but if you leave it without pruning it, it probably will end up reaching 8 feet high. Most Loropetalum are best in zone 7 to 9. They can take some winter damage in zone 7. Maybe once every 10 years we'll get a winter that will knock these back pretty hard, but it'll rarely kill them. It's almost like a free pruning, really. Ruby has a moderate growth rate, maybe a foot or a foot and a half in a single season. All the new growth on it has this amazing dark purple foliage the entire season, and it contrasts with this green, darker green foliage in the middle really nicely. So the occasional pruning on it encourages new growth and keeps this color contrast throughout the season. Loropetalum will grow in the sun or the shade. If you put this plant in the shade though, you're not going to see any of this new purple foliage color. It's going to almost be a green plant, so it's really best in more than a half a day sun all the way to full sun. Full sun would be fantastic. You'd have the best color on it. I actually have these under a shade cloth, and they're just not as much of that foliage contrast in this shady space. There are many uses for Ruby Loropetalum. One would be as a screening plant, really. It could just be left to grow whatever size it wants to get, and it has a very dense growth habit, so you can't really see through it. Also, if it ever had any damage to it, you can just cut it on the top and it'll regenerate growth from the bottom, unlike using a conifer, which is very hard to reestablish any growth in the bottom once they've thinned out. This, you could just almost probably cut it to the ground and have it regenerate itself. So this is a good choice as a screening plant. Also, Ruby is a variety in which could be used on a higher foundation. If you had windows that were 4 or 5 feet high, this would probably be a very good choice for that. The color can be a little weird with whatever color your house is, but also this could be used as a container plant. In zone 7, you definitely have to protect the container in the wintertime. If the roots froze solid, it would be damaged from that. Ruby Loropetalum gets a pink frilly flower on it in the late spring and also again in the early fall. It's really beautiful, contrasting with with the purple foliage and the green foliage. It's late summer now while I'm taking this video, and they're starting to bud up now and will bloom pretty soon, probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks into the fall. Loropetalum can be pruned pretty much anytime you need to prune them. I probably wouldn't do a lot of pruning on them in the fall because you won't get any of that growth back, and ever how it looks when you finish pruning, it's how it's going to look the entire winter until the middle of the following spring. So probably best to prune it in spring, or by midsummer, have whatever pruning you're going to do on it be finished at that point. In terms of planting, if you have a heavy clay soil, you probably would want to use some pine bark soil conditioner, 50-50 with the clay. We're actually growing this in a fine pine mixture like that. If you have very sandy soils, peat moss would be a good choice, 50-50 with whatever comes out of the hole, or compost or cow manure, anything that will hold some water in place. Just leave these mounded up, pull your soil up to the edge of them, lightly mulch. You definitely don't want to get mulch up onto the stems of these. I think that would cause some problems later with them being just too much moisture up on the stems. The other consideration with Loropetalum, and this is very important, the wood, when they're this small, they're pretty fragile, and so you have to be careful getting these out of the pot. You do never, ever, ever want to lift these up by the top of the plant. You need to flip the pot over and just let it fall into your hand and pull the pot off from the top, and then flip it over gently and place it into the hole, because they are kind of brittle when they're this size. I would put Loropetalum in the very drought tolerant category. You're rarely ever going to have to water these, although if they become very, very dry in the summer, the growth on them would probably slow and almost stop, and all the purple foliage is on this plant is on the new growth. So keeping it growing and keeping it happy during the summer is probably a good idea to give you this best coloration between this purple foliage and this beautiful green interior foliage. Not any real disease or insect problems to worry about on really any Loropetalum. We rarely ever have to spray these in the nursery. You'll see the occasional leaf chewed on. It's just not that big of a deal. It grows so fast it can cover that up pretty quickly. They're basically deer proof. I've never seen deer sample a Loropetalum. So what are you waiting for? Even you can grow the low maintenance, purple foliaged evergreen Ruby Loropetalum. Thank you for watching. And if this video was helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for future videos. Again, thank you. You're not going to get a lot of growth out of them, and the growth is where this beautiful purple foliage is if you're allowing them to become abnormally dry though. So it's okay. It's okay.